All right, let's talk about something that is absolutely fundamental to student success: literacy in our secondary schools. And look, this isn't just about what happens in English class. Not at all. This is the key that unlocks learning across the entire curriculum, from science to history and beyond.
So why the urgency? Well, get this. Every single year, more than 120,000 disadvantaged students walk into secondary school for the first time already behind in reading. That is a huge number of kids who are, from day one, trying to play catch-up with a curriculum that's only getting harder.
And the stakes? They really couldn't be any higher. This quote says it all, doesn't it? This isn't just about getting good grades. Poor literacy skills are directly linked to poorer outcomes in pretty much every part of life. We're talking health, we're talking employment, even personal finance. So yeah, this is a challenge we have to meet head-on. So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to dig into what this literacy gap really is. Then we'll explore the big solution, something called the disciplinary literacy approach. After that, we'll get into practical strategies for reading, vocabulary, writing, and talk, and we'll finish up with how to give that targeted support to the students who need it the most.
Okay, first up, the secondary school literacy gap. I think we seriously underestimate the academic leap students have to make when they go from primary to secondary school. They're not just in a bigger building with more people. They've entered a completely different world of learning.
I mean, just think about it. You go from having one main teacher to what? 5, 6, maybe even more? And they all have different expectations. The textbooks get way denser, much more technical. And the language? It changes completely from one class to the next. The word factors in your math class means something totally different from the factors that led to a historical event. That transition alone is a huge hurdle.
So how do we build a bridge across this gap? Well, it starts with a real game-changing shift in our thinking. It's called the disciplinary literacy approach. And the whole idea is to stop treating literacy as this one-size-fits-all generic skill and start seeing it as something that's deeply woven into each and every subject.
So what is it really? At its core, disciplinary literacy says that every subject has its own unique language, its own way of thinking, its own way of communicating. The discipline here isn't about student behavior. It's about the discipline of history, the discipline of science, the discipline of art. The goal is to get every teacher to see themselves as a teacher of literacy within their own subject. Let's make this feel a little more real. Okay, how do you read like a historian? It's not just about understanding the words on the page, right? It's more like an investigation. A historian is constantly asking questions about the source, thinking about the context, and checking it against other bits of evidence. That's a very specific reading skill, and it has to be taught. And the same idea works for talking like a scientist. It's so much more than just using a few big words. It's all about being precise, using evidence to back up what you're saying, and even critiquing others' ideas. Scientific conversation has its own set of rules, and students need to be taught how to play the game. And one more for good measure: writing like a geographer. This might mean explaining cause and effect, or interpreting data from a map, or using really specific terms like net migration. It is a unique kind of writing that kids aren't just going to figure out on their own. It has to be taught explicitly. Okay, so with that big idea in mind, let's get practical. We're going to start with unlocking texts. You can think of this as the input side of learning. How do we help our students actually access and make sense of all the complex stuff they have to read every day?
A really powerful tool for this is something called the simple view of reading. It sounds simple, but it's brilliant. It breaks reading down into two core parts. You've got word reading, which is just, can you decode the words on the page? And you've got language comprehension. Do you understand what those words mean? A student can struggle with one, or the other, or both. And knowing which it is, that's the key.
And this idea is so important because it helps us see that there are basically 4 different types of readers. For instance, you might have a student who can read every word perfectly but has no idea what it all means. That's a poor comprehender. Or you could have another student who understands everything they hear but really struggles to decode the words. That fits a dyslexic profile. Once you can pinpoint the problem, your support can be laser-focused.
Now, a huge part of that comprehension piece is vocabulary. And a great way to think about vocab is in 3 tiers. Tier 1 words are your everyday words. The real action for secondary teachers is in tiers 2 and 3. Tier 2 words like analyze or establish are those academic words you see everywhere, while Tier 3 words like photosynthesis are super subject-specific. These are the words that have to be taught directly.
So how do we teach those words well? Well, it's definitely not about just handing out a list of words to memorize. For robust instruction, you need to give students a definition they can actually understand. Show them the word being used in a bunch of different ways. Get them to use it right away, and then design activities where they have to really grapple with its meaning. And of course, you've got to keep bringing it up again and again. Repetition is crucial. Okay, let's flip the script. We've talked about the input, unlocking texts. Now let's talk about the output, expressing ideas. Once students understand something, how do we help them communicate that knowledge through good writing and high-quality classroom discussion?
Let's start with writing. If reading is complex, writing is on a whole other level. Some people say it's as cognitively demanding as playing a game of chess. Why? Because you're juggling 3 different things all at once. Transcription, which is the physical act of spelling and writing, composition, which is coming up with and organizing your ideas, and executive function, which is all the planning and reviewing. It's a heavy lift. So the only way to manage that complexity is to break it down into smaller pieces. We can model how to plan using things like graphic organizers. We can explicitly teach sentence starters to get the drafting process going. And we can give students checklists so they learn how to check their own work. The whole idea is to provide this scaffolding, this support, and then slowly take it away as they get more confident.
And beyond writing, talk is such a powerful tool for learning, but it has to be structured. The Accountable Talk framework is perfect for this. It just means that any good classroom discussion needs to be accountable to 3 things. Knowledge, is what you're saying accurate? Reasoning, can you back it up? And the community, are you listening to and building on what others are saying? Okay, we've talked a lot about strategies for the whole class, but what about those students who are still struggling to keep up? In our final section, we're focusing on targeted support, how we can deliver really high-quality interventions for the students who need that extra boost. The best way to approach this is with a tiered model. Tier 1 is the foundation. It's just excellent, high-quality teaching for everyone. For students who still need more, we move to Tier 2, which is targeted work in a small group with others who have similar needs. And for those who need the most help, there's Tier 3, intensive, one-on-one support. The support matches the need.
But here's the thing, and this is so important. None of this works without good assessment. You can't just throw an intervention at a student if you don't know what the specific problem is. Assessment is the tool that lets us figure out who needs help, pinpoint their exact struggle, is it decoding, comprehension, match them to the right kind of support, and then check back in to make sure it's actually working.
And that brings us to our last really powerful idea. This isn't about piling more work onto teachers. It's about flipping the script. When a science teacher pays attention to the literacy demands of their subject, their students become better scientists. Improving literacy isn't some extra chore. It's a tool that makes all of our teaching more effective.
So if there's one big takeaway, it's this. Every teacher is a teacher of literacy. By really embracing that idea, we don't just improve reading scores, we unlock learning across the entire school. So as we wrap up, I'll just leave you with this question to think about. What is one disciplinary literacy strategy you could try this week? Because taking that first step from idea to action, that's how real change starts. Thanks for joining me.